Let's just make this simple and plain. I grab this, they won't remember his name. He'll be past tense. Literally go from ass to memory lane. First.
You forgot about the little Noane. That thing be going crazy. And since Charlie bit me, it's one finger on the bait.
Y'all might have to play this back, but when you piece it all together, those are the type of lines that created smack. So
It's one thing to be blessed with a great battle. It's another thing to witness a great event. A league owner dreams of having an event where at least half of the card provides entertainment. That's why we're taking the time to highlight the top 50 events of all time. Here, we'll discuss the cards that contain a classic battle, cards that have a series of good moments and impact, and the cards that were stellar from top to bottom. Note, I won't be going into full detail on every battle on every entry. It will be a thorough overview. Let's get into it. At 50, we have Fade 3. 2020 was an extremely tough time for the battle rap culture and the world as a whole. The sport had to adapt in a myriad of ways for at least 11 months. But in March of 2020, we were given a glimpse back into normalcy when the Bullpen platform put together one of the first open events in the COVID era. And it wasn't just any event. The headliner contained one of the most blood-boiling matches between Ace Amin and John Adam. The undercard features some solid performances as well, like Riggs against Flacco L, Bad News against Snake Eyes, and Clone against PC. However, the bulk of the attraction was the spectacle of the main event and the fact that big stages were once again an element of the art form. John Adam gave us a vintage big stage performance, and Ace rose to the occasion to make this battle worthwhile and also gave us a pivotal moment in the COVID era. You can argue that there are other events that have more star power and rewatchable battles, but the importance and impact of Fade 3 will forever stand. At 49, we have Pearly Gates. A great way to give an imprint some legs to stand on is by having a notable first installment. RBE in 2017 were known for their clashes in the club Drum venue. And I would venture to say that Pearly Gates is the best event that they ever threw in Drum that year. Big K vs. Old Red in a contender versus contender scenario, Ilmac vs. JC in a pin heavy crash course, Daylight vs. Ill Will in a style clash we never knew we needed, and DNA vs. Big Cannon in somewhat of an overdue matchup. Without diminishing the value of the last three battles on the card, the top four battles made the card stand out tremendously and gave us some marquee performances from all-time greats. DNA had the clearest win of the night versus a Big Cannon that was on a nice streak. Ill Will had an exceptional performance against the locked-in Daylight. Ilmac gave us a top-notch performance against JC during his Lux campaign, and Old Red knocked Big K out of the top contention in the Cody race. This is the most rewatchable installment of the Pearly Gates series. At 48, we have the Get Back. After the club drum days were over, RBE made their presence felt in the Atlanta market. This is one of the last major events that occurred before the global pandemic was declared. This card was also in direct competition with the first ever caffeine event in the same city, making this weekend filled with many things to discuss. The card contained a controversial judge battle between Lady J and Blue Cocaine, a tense match between Snake Eyes and Rosenberg Raw, a standard battle between Mac Myron and a returning show-off, the all-time classic between Sharon and Chef Trez, the RBE debut for A-Ward against Eddie Myers, the return of Adi Boom against Big K, and the return of 40 Cal against Ill Will. The night didn't have many dull moments as Mac vs. Showoff, Rosenberg vs. Snake, and Danny Myers vs. A-Ward were solid. Sharon and Chef Trez stole the show with a great battle and an even greater fourth round clash. 40 Cal surprised many with his approach and angles he used against Will. Big K ended Boom's career in the span of one round, and the latter being the most impactful as the aftermath had many lasting effects, and K would garner massive acclaim for his body bag of the year, and in hindsight, body bag of the decade. At 47, we have Double Impact. While I've been pretty firm on prioritizing praise for one-on-one bouts, it's time to show some love to some extraordinary 2-on-2s. With the major resurgence of 2-on-2s in the mid-2010s, URL decided to throw an entire 2-on-2 card that features some star-studded matchups. While this is considered an all-star game for a lot of fans, there was no shortage of competition and energy behind these battles. Averb and Young Ill versus Cortez and Math Hoffa was a bona fide battle of nostalgia. Clips and John Adam versus Big T and Saga was more entertaining than anyone would have thought. Marvin Quest garnered massive respect and re-solidified their status as 2-on-2 legends against Chess and Steams. Briz and T-Top continued to stamp themselves as leaders of the new school with a dominant display versus Magic and Chilla. Above all else, though, we were giving a legendary 2-on-2 performance from Gun Titles, which was the epitome of lightning in a bottle. At 46, we have Born Legacy 6. After a devastating loss, this event to many got the energy back on track, with it being one of the first app exclusive events. There was not one dud on the card. Deuce vs. Fonz was a good opener, Jada Nightwing and Madface gave us a pretty good style clash. Don Marino and Prep gained momentum from their good showings, but the top three really put the card over. JC versus Mike P was a great kickoff for both individuals this year, with JC being stellar in his first two rounds and Mike P giving us a well-needed message to the culture in his third. Franchise versus Chef Trez was bonkers as well, as Franchise was bombing with his aggression and back-to-back punches, and Chef Trez showcased his polished rapping ability with his keen ability to freestyle. And last but certainly not least, Geechee and Chess gave us an app classic that kicked off extraordinary years for both guys. At 45, we have Checkpoint, Urs' 24th birthday party. To many, Don't Flop really kicked into gear in the 2012/2013 period with all-time battles, stellar matchups, and an ear to the battle rap audience on a transnational scale. One of the most momentous occasions would have to be this event, as it was not only celebrating the creator of the Don't Flop brand, but also the movement of UK battle rap, as publicity and recognition was at an all-time high. Although the card was very compact, it contained non-stop action. You had a collection of 2-on-2 bouts, but the one that really stole the show was Unanimous and Chris Leese versus Charlie Clips and DNA. The main course were the one-on-one bout. The undercard included Joker Star versus Eam, a crazy body bag victory from Sunny against Villain, Conceited versus Kruger, Tony D versus Charlie Clips, and DNA versus Arsenal as the main event. The last three really put the event over the top. Kruger versus Conceited was a style clash no one knew they needed. Clips versus Tony D was a battle between heavyweights in their prime, and DNA versus Arsenal lived up to the hype and gave the culture one of the best main events of the year. At 44, we have Caskets or Classics. 2014 was a great year for battle rap, specifically for Queen of the Ring, as they gained major exposure and traction from events like this entry. The promotion was just as rewarding as the final product, with media attractions like 40 Bars versus Daylight, the heated matchup between Stargirl Lady Red versus Don Lady, and the unexpected classic battle between Official and C3. This was complemented with some solid matchups between C the Boss versus Diesel, Miss Miami versus Lady E, and the rematch between Miss Merc and Karma Kane. 40 Bars established herself as the best and biggest battler on the Queen of the Ring brand by beating the eccentric Daylight on her home platform. Official and C3 gained a major push after their amazing showings in this event, and this event as a whole built massive momentum into a mega event they would have later on in the year. At 43, we have Royalty. In contrast to the previous entry, this event was more of a return to form for Queen of the Ring, as they were regathering their footing with a marquee event. While the event ended up losing a major battle, the weekend was still filled with many memorable moments. Miss Hustle vs. 40 Bars was a huge main event that created massive dialogue, and the undercard aided the main event with battles like Robin Rhymes vs. First Lady Flames, Miss Merc vs. KCJ, Diesel vs. Cheddar, Ichigadi and Coffee Brown vs. Misfit and Cortez, Chess vs. Tori Doe, and Official vs. Rum Nitty. The Richmond crowd was very receptive and very energetic, as this was one of the first times Queen of the Ring touched a different market. The openers got the crowd going as Robin and Flames put on solid showings, Diesel and Cheddar was a pretty good back and forth, and Casey had an electrifying performance against Miss Merc that sparked their road to campaign. Mafia and Murder Ave was a cool exhibition for what it was worth, but the last three were bangers. Chess had a dominant performance against a returning Tori Doe, Indian Official put on an intergender punch fest, and 40 vs. Miss Hustle was a clash of the titans, and still revered as one of the best main events between the ladies. This served as one of the most impactful moments in 40's career, and one of the most competitive matches in Hustle's catalog. At 42, we have Closure. One thing RBE deserves credit for is their thematic events and their ability to book matches that we otherwise wouldn't see. The card was built around battlers with differences. The main card included O Red vs. J Murda, QB vs. Bonnie Godiva, J Mills vs. E Ness, Math Hopper vs. Charlie Clips, and Hitman Holla vs. Bill Collector as the main event. To be frank, the top two battles really carried the card. While it was good to see everyone handle their differences in raps, the top two were the ones that really captured most of the energy and emotion. Clips and Math gave us one of their best performances of the year and gave their perspective of the Bowl of Five debacle. Bill Collector and Hitman finally went at it to resolve their altercation from 7 years prior, the latter being one of the most distinguishable battles and main events of the decade. At 41, we have URL's second app-only event. I know this may be unfathomable to many, but please bear with me as this will be a shorter entry. This event was great when you really consider the amount of battles we got and the replay value we have in them. Danny Myers vs. Mike P, New Jersey Twerk vs. Chilla Jones, O Red vs. Chess, Jerry West vs. John Nadon, Charlie Clips vs. JC in the rematch, T-Top vs. Bill Collector, Rum Nitty vs. Big T, Tay-Rock vs. Louise, Shotgun Shook vs. Franchise, and Drugs vs. Arsenal. With 10 battles, they were at least batting 70%, and the ones that really hit were nailed. At 40, we have Gnome 11. 2021 was one of the most action-packed years in battle rap history, and it's no coincidence that Euro had their busiest year with their Caffeine partnership. One of their marquee events they were hoping to improve from their last installment was Gnome, and they went into overdrive with 9 battles, 10 if you're including Swamp vs. T-Top that happened on a different card. Fonz vs. JC, Loso vs. Jerry West, Mike P vs. Luke Castro, Jada Nightwing vs. Av, Danny Myers vs. Real Sick, T-Rex vs. Easy to Block Captain, B-Dot vs. DNA, Geechee Gotti vs. Rum Nitty as the UM3 final match, and Tay-Rock vs. Chilla Jones as the co-main event. There was not one bad battle on this card, and there were a slew of moments. The day 2 quote-unquote matches were a bit more on the lukewarm side, but the main card definitely delivered. Luke Castro had a milestone moment against Mike P in a competitive match. Av had a vintage performance against a red hot Jada Nightwing at the time. But the night really kicked up when Real Sick put Danny Myers' winning streak to an end and the Cody run to an emphatic halt, one of the most shocking body bags in history. Following that, you had an entertaining battle between Easy and Rex in an anticipated matchup. B-Dot vs. DNA had a dope battle of angles. Rock had a bounce-back win over Chilla Jones to kick off his career renaissance. And Geechee Gotti vs. Rum Nitty lived up to the hype. It gave us one of the most surreal moments you'll see in the culture. You also had one of the biggest pop stars adding more money to the pot and co-signing them as the best battlers in the world. At 39, we have Grizzlemania 2. In the peak of the golden era and one of the last years of prominence for Grind Time, they gave us their sequel to the Grizzlemania series. In my opinion, this event encapsulates a lot of where battle rap was at the time. Day 1 consisted of a 2-on-2 tournament that featured a masterclass from Johnny Storm and Madness against Amzilla and PH in the finals. The main card was the following day with Enes vs. Iron Solomon as the headliner, and the undercard included a barrage of battles. The Swords vs. Real Deal, PH vs. Soulcon vs. Badness, Caustic vs. Rhetoric, Mac Lethal vs. Dirtbag Dan, High Collide vs. Sergeant General, Pass vs. Philly Swain, Cadillac vs. Mood Swing, Swave 7 vs. Sid Vicious, and Amy Miller vs. Young Gaddis. But of the many battles, the standouts were the back and forth between Swave 7 and Sid Vicious, the clash between the Saurus and Real Deal, the stellar performance from Soulcon against Madness, a high-profile win from Philly Swain against Pass, the body bag win from Young Gaddis against Amy Miller, and of course the classic battle between Ness and Iron, where Iron was in rare form and Ness had material that aged much better on the watch back. The event was a spectacle and is one of the last hoorahs for Grind Time. At 38, we have Vendetta. Vendetta is an event that is typically remembered for 2 battles, but one would be remiss if they didn't highlight the other things that made this night legendary. You have the exceptional camera work from the staff, and you have one of the best cards on the KOTD brand. The Saurus vs. Kruger was a great back and forth and showcased the Saurus' ability to be timeless in every bout. DNA had a standout round against and fought back to make the battle maintain good replay value over the years. But that would be the end of battles that were being competitive, and you would have clear performances from here on out. Past that one, the clearest wins on the brand at the time versus K-Shine on his King of the Dot debut. Bender had a top 2 performance of his career versus Sid Vicious. Arsenal cleared Ilmac in an extremely bizarre outing and added another clear win to his MVP caliber year. Daylight's infamous ski mask became a staple as he gave Rich Dollaz one of the most damaging losses he'd received, but nothing was more damaging than what Disaster did to Cannabis. At 37, we have Rookies vs. Vets. Before there was final exams, you had this series. You didn't just have rookies going against solidified greats, but you also had them doing it in Gramercy Theater with over 1,000 people. The matchups included most of the UFF 3 class and a few rookie stragglers. Snow vs. Real Deal, Prep vs. John Adon, Thesaurus vs. Shotgun Shug, Chess vs. DNA, Mr. Wavy vs. K-Shine, Briz Rothstein vs. Averb, and T-Top vs. Charlie Clips is the main event. You had a couple of instances where a rookie was completely outclassed. Snow against Real Deal and Prep vs. John Adon are examples, but majority of the up-and-comers showcased that they had promise along with growing pains. The event was ultimately a success, and there hasn't been a rendition that matched this output. At 36, we have Band Legacy. The first band battle was a spectacle and a breath of fresh air. It wasn't necessarily because of the unknown match concept, but it was more about the allure of the JP production and the gritty feel of the battles. The crossover event between Band and Born Legacy is vital because it gave opportunities to rising talents and mid-tiers. The weekend-long event gave us a collection of battles to help kickstart the URL app content. There was a lot going on this weekend, so I'll try my best to highlight most of the standouts. The standout PG encounters were Swamp vs. Your Honor, Ace Amin vs. Fuse the General, and Street Hymns vs. Kid Chaos. Ace Amin, Swamp, and Your Honor were the most talked about PG performers this weekend and were heavily scouted for the duration of the year. The standout one-offs were Moon vs. Squeako, Young Grizz vs. Cuban, and Riggs vs. Luke Castro. The latter was one of the best battles of the weekend, and the other 2 were solid gems as well. But the main attractions were the band battles, the Saga vs. Ryder, Big T vs. Jackboy Main, and Av vs. Glue Easy. At 35, we have World Domination 4. World Domination is a marquee event for the King of the Dot brand, with many battlers from different countries looking to showcase their greatness in the sport. It is one of the best battle rap extravaganzas the culture has to offer, and this is one of the best two-day events ever. The standouts were 100 Bullets versus JC, the rematch between Disaster and Arsenal, DNA and Sharon in a replacement battle, Bonnie Godiva and Gaddis putting on for the ladies, Roan versus Real Deal, Charlie Clips versus Hollahan, and Pat Stay versus Arcane for the chain. The latter was special as Pat Stay won the chain and changed the landscape of King of the Dot and the prestige of the chain. At 34, we have Max Out. The name was extremely fitting for the league and the caliber of MCs on the card. In my opinion, this sits as RBE's first big stage event, and it was a memorable night. While the event included big names that drew the audience, the staff made sure to stay true to their brand and the loyalists on the card as well. Clone versus Big K, which was the replacement battle for Sirius MK, O-Red versus Jack, Show Off versus Rosenberg Raw, Ill Will versus A-Ward, and Cassidy versus Hitman as the mega main event. While you can argue that there weren't many competitive battles on the card, there were a series of impactful moments that took place on this night. Even with the short prep, Clone and Big K were able to put on a good battle. Rosenberg had one of his best performances of his career against Show Off, and Show Off went viral for the wrong reasons. O-Red and Jag was very interesting as O-Red was on the verge of displaying his dominance and taking over the battle until he lost his voice, a common trope for the Transformer. And it's no shocker that Ill Will and A-Ward gave us the best battle of the night with countless rebuttals, various haymakers, insults to the cameraman, all the good stuff. The battle did wonders for both, but many felt this battle specifically pushed A-Ward into a realm of the elites. And Hitman vs. Cassidy was the main event with many moments before, during, and after the battle. And even if the traditional battle fans say that Hitman won the battle, Cassidy ultimately won the war and garnered massive momentum afterward. Now, what he did with that momentum is an entirely different discussion. In closing, Max Out was a good first installment for the brand, but it surely isn't the best one. At 33, we have Volume 5. The first 5 volumes were peak small room content for the brand, as they had mid-tiers, rookies, and top tiers alike contribute some amazing work in the series. Specifically, Volume 5 is the last volume that really stuck to the main formula. Swamp vs. Ace Amin, Geechee Gotti vs. O-Red, Rum Nitty vs. Chilla Jones, Arsenal vs. Chess, Sue Surf vs. Reed Dallas, and Averb vs. DNA as the main event. The only lackluster battle on the card was from the rookies, but the rest of the card for sure picked up the slack. Geechee vs. O-Red was an intense champ vs. champ match. Rum Nitty vs. Chilla Jones was a barfest that many diehards were happy to see. Arsenal vs. Chess was another aggressive battle that brought the best out of each competitor. Surf and Reed was entertaining, minus the slip-ups, and Verb vs. DNA was a good main event where both guys delivered great material and offered some high-level angling for us to enjoy. At 32, we have Gnome 6, one of the first and only gnomes to close out a year. 2016 was a transformative year for the brand as they went through a transition and a shuffle in talent. In that shuffle, they were able to get new stars like Av, Chess, Rum Nitty, Briz Rothstein, and T-Top. In the midst of the NWX and Gun Titles frenzy, we got a card filled with good battles and remarkable moments. Ill Will vs. Charlie Clips was a hot and cold battle as Clips was cruising through the battle at a steady pace and Will found himself having peaks and valleys. While people would say it wasn't their best, it was still entertaining to fans of both battlers. Briz vs. Arsenal was a battle of entertainment, energy, and ultimately disrespect. The battle really accentuated Briz's star power and the unique style he had in the culture, and even though it was Arsenal's pseudo last URL match, he gave us a performance to hang his hat on. DNA and Daylight's replacement battle would be Av and Chess, and this was more than a pleasant surprise. Av set the stage ablaze in his Gnome debut, and Chess made the battle good and created demand for another Gnome appearance. Tay Rock vs. Rum Nitty was the co-main event and unfortunately didn't live up to the hype. Both battlers took different approaches and looked like they were more than out of their element, and were focused on other things besides winning their battle. Many consider this to be a bad look for both. But luckily, the actual main event was spectacular. Sue Surf returned to form in this battle, and T-Top met Sue Surf upstairs and made this into one of the best known battles in recent memory at the time. The choke in the third does put a sour taste in many people's mouths, but the one-round exchanges leading to the third were worthwhile. At 31, you have Born Legacy 2. Yes, 2016 is a year where you can legitimately say a Born Legacy trumped a Gnome. This kicked off the movement of the small rooms and reinvigorated the Euro brand in various ways. You had Young Eggs vs. Dot, None vs. Bonus, Bangs vs. Jerry West, Ty Law vs. Cicero, Mike P vs. Tink the Demon, Rum Nitty vs. Av, Cortez vs. Chilla Jones, and Chess vs. Reed Dallas as the main event. This card sparked energy and contained hunger that was profound, unlike what we've seen before. The latter portion of the card was remarkable. Chilla and Cortez gave us a solid match. Chess and Reed duked it out in a highly aggressive bout. Tink the Demon and Mike P were a pleasant surprise and had moments galore, but Av vs. Rum Nitty completely shifted the game and gave the culture the reset it needed at the time. At 30, we have Gnome 5. This is the third Gnome appearance on the list, and this one holds a lot of weight because it was truly a night of statements. We had Jazz versus Official, DNA versus Sirius Jones, Aver versus K-Shine, Suter versus Tay-Rock, Charlie Clips versus Hollow Ladon. Not one battle on this card. We got upsets, we got all-time rounds, and we also got declarations on more than one front. Shine gave us one of the best known performances of all time in his upset against Aver. Official had her career-defining moment against Jazz. DNA and Sirius had one of the best back and forths of the night. Clips and Hollow duked it out for the GOAT spot, with Hollow leaving a blueprint for deconstruction for Clips, and Tay-Rock and Surf gave us a good battle that aged nicely over the year. At 29, we have Summer Madness 5. URL will circle back months later and give us a high-quality SM to match at the time. Funny enough, there was some level of criticism from the fans due to the lack of high-profile matchups on the card, quote-unquote. And even though hindsight is 2020, the criticism is still preposterous. We were given Official versus Miss Hustle in her return, T-Rex versus T-Top, Mr. Wavy versus John Adon, NWX versus Cake Life in the rematch, Big T versus Shotgun Suge, Tay-Rock versus Calico, and Loaded Lux versus Clips. Once again, no bad battles on the card. Miss Hustle had a vintage performance against a solid Official. T-Rex and T-Top was also a good battle where Rex gave us some pretty good work and T-Top rose to the occasion on his first SM. John Adon set another rookie packing with a dominant win over Wavy in a dramatic fashion. NWX and Kick Life finished the objective and gave us a solid 2-on-2. Big T and Shotgun Suge was an unexpectedly good back and forth. Rock and Calico was an all-time battle, and Charlie Clips versus Lux was a spectacle for good and bad reasons. Summer Madness 5 is easily one of the most underrated SMs when you talk about quality from top to bottom and output. At 28, we have Smack Volume 4. On Volume 4, we were gifted with crazy matchups with good output to match. T-Top versus Clean Paper, Chef Trez versus Danny Myers, John Adon versus O-Red, Charlie Clips versus New Jersey Twerk, Arsenal versus Geechee Gotti, and Shotgun Suge versus Rum Nitty. While the night started off slow with the Trez and Danny battle, it immediately kicked up with T-Top's superb performance against Clean, John Adon versus O-Red having a competitive match with their different approaches, Clips and Twerk being a legitimate slugfest with each of them exchanging crazy rounds, Arsenal turning back the clock against Geechee and them having a great battle, and Suge and Rum Nitty closing out the card with some great energy and moments to match. While you can make the argument that it may not be a classic battle on the card, there are various high quality moments on the card with very few things to nitpick. At 27, we have Traffic 3. Traffic 3 is the best traffic on the series and also one of the best cards to happen on the West Coast. The presentation was top-notch and the battle spoke volumes. B-Dot versus EK is a surprise battle, Av versus Geechee Gotti, Gluezy versus Danny Myers is the replacement battle, DNA versus Rum Nitty, JC versus T-Top, and Disaster versus Tay-Rock is the main event. And I will get this out early. The most underwhelming thing on the card was the main event, but no one left the building complaining because everything else delivered. B-Dot vs EK was an exceptional battle with an exceptional third from B-Dot in his URL debut. Gluezy gave a heartfelt performance against the solid Danny. Av and Geechee gave us the battle of the night with the street talk and back-to-back punches. Then he gave us a bounce-back performance against a good DNA. And T-Top gave us his all-time performance against JC during his Lux run. At 26, we have World Domination 2. Out of the entire series, the second one is in a class of its own. A staggering 20 battles over 2 days. And the beauty in this was the quality meeting the quantity in a remarkable fashion. It would be nearly impossible for me to highlight everything that occurred over the course of 20 battles, but I can say they gave us 2 bona fide classics and a collage of moments to choose from. The standouts were Sharon versus Kruger, The Swords versus Marv 1 versus Pat Stay, Ilmac versus Bender, Mad Child versus Dirtbag Dan, Disaster versus SMP, and 360 versus Kid Twist. Pat Stay vs. Marv 1 was one of the most viral battles in battle rap at the time due to some controversy, but also due to the prowess that both combatants showed. Ilmac vs. Bender was an amazing battle, and both guys gave one of their best rapping performances at the time. Although the original installment was exceptional in creating the blueprint, the second one was just as important as it established it as a staple. One of the few cards with that many battles with no real grievances. That's a testament to the brand and the tradition as a whole.
But true, you niggas can't break me or stop the movement. And I found that out when me and the other Don got into it. So you gonna try to tell me about me? That's kinda useless. Cause I already looked in the mirror and put a hollow through it. Stop it, stupid! Nigga! I will white pearly date you. And nigga, I'll first 48 you. That second 40 starving. Nigga, that's cause the first 48 you.
Nigga, while you was on Earth, I was on Mars with it. Conquer my fears through blood, sweat, and tears. In these battles, I went through wars with it. Over the years, I opened some ears, met a few stars in it. The last words I used was all ended with arms in it.
So, you avoided bars your whole career, so let me express there's no more waiting. My delivery is on point for this time. See, I got a box with your name on it. The Amazon got me in my prime. So
Nah, niggas know what the fuck it is. We splitting that bitch.
You know that.
In 33 AD, Jesus and Judas died. So in his 33rd year, Enos gets crucified.
I'ma catch him waiting at the bus stop. He wait on the bus for rides, I waiting to the bus stop. Waiting till the bus arrive, spray one in the bus stop. Leave you on the bus stop, lay with a bus stop.
I came. That's a hard name.
Next week I battle. Feel like I'm on a tour date. Tomorrow, Easter. That's the Lord's Day. This finna be a curry. 30. I reverse punches. Wait, you're a Claymore? I'm Achilles. I'm more clay. I'm never different.
Now that's where we different, geek. Cause see, I've been about that action. 30 under the 40, that's an improper fraction. Don't fuck with me now, man.
That's right. I ain't even trying to talk to him. I St. Louis the clip. I arc through him. Leave his chest blue. Tony Stark's through him. Hole so big, fuck around and walk through him.
While he was watching Toy Story, I was watching South Central with the bros. While he was trying to put a nose on Mr. Potato Head, I was trying to put a potato on him.
And ask yourself, who would have the faster swing if they actually had some beef? Look at him, back to me. Bring an Old Spice or any ad you've seen, I'll give you the axe, cause I'm a brute when I'm armed and hammered if we have to take it to that degree.
At 25, we have Blackout 8. As premature as it may seem, Blackout 8 was really one of a kind, and it was the perfect blend of the old and the new. After 5 years without a Blackout event, King of the Dot brought it back in a star-studded fashion with many returns, many debuts, and many great matchups. After a couple years of tournaments and smaller environments, it was very refreshing to see King of the Dot return with one of their staples back in Canada. Geechee Gotti vs. Holohan and Remedy vs. Ilmac were the two announced main events. The unannounced battles were Mike P vs. Thesaurus, Arsenal vs. Franchise, A-Word vs. Real Sick, and Sharon vs. Big K Day 1. Day 1 was pretty top-notch as we got Mike P and Thesaurus in a really good match. Franchise put on the show against Arsenal. Sharon and Big K had a pretty competitive match as well. And A-Ward vs. Real Sick had Battle of the Night, one of the best battles of the weekend. Also, Geechee Gotti took his victory lap against Holohan after his easy battle. While Day 2 wasn't as impactful as the first, it did maintain great momentum throughout, and the night closed strong with two of the top 3 battles of the weekend, Jada Nightwing vs. Maflex and Ilmac vs. Rumnitty. Jay and Maflex was a battle filled with substance, amazing creativity, and diverse approaches, and Ilmac vs. Rumnitty was a great battle as we anticipated from both guys as they gave all-time performances to cap off the second best Blackout ever. At 24, we have Stay Forever. This is also going to be a quick entry because I think the title of the event speaks for itself, and I won't really be judging this event like the others on the list out of respect. Before King of the Dot brought back their widely acclaimed Blackout event, they gave a well-deserved tribute event to the late great Pat Stay. This is one of the most heartwarming events and moments in the recent years. With Pat Stay's family in attendance, the brand and the battlers were able to raise over $100,000 for them and put on a show commemorating Pat Stay and his legacy. While the battles and surprises were great and had a lasting effect on many people, I believe the overall unity and cause of the event is what makes it so powerful. At 23, we have Summer Madness 1. This was a special night for Euro as they had one of the biggest events and turnouts in battle rap history. In the classic Webster Hall venue, Euro threw a star-studded card to expand their reach and made a full transition from Smack to Euro, and they never turned back from there. Summer Madness was ultimately a success as they sold out the venue and also had many great moments to pull from. Hitman Holla vs. Holla Down was the main event, and you also had Averb vs. Charlie Clips, T-Rex vs. Conceited, Math Hoffa vs. Calico, Sue Surf vs. K-Shine, and DNA vs. X Factor. You had grudge matches, you also had back and forths, you also had good moments, and you also had handheld mics. Sometimes you have to take the good with the bad. While the main event didn't live up to the hype, the rest of the card helped their weight. DNA and X Factor was pretty good as an opener, but Sue Surf and K-Shine stole the show and was battle of the night. You also had Calico and Math, which was body of the night, surprisingly, and then you had T-Rex and Conceited, which was a solid clash of styles. Clips also had an electrifying debut against Averb that added fuel to the fire in the Averb versus New York saga. While a good portion of the battles don't age in the best fashion, it's still pretty synonymous with big names, bright lights, and being a phenomenon in the culture. At 22, we have Gnome 7. It wasn't going to be long until we had another Gnome card on this list. As star-studded as the other previous Gnomes were, there's just something special about this one. This was a pretty good Gnome. You had New Jersey Twerk versus Mike P.S.'s surprise battle, Ill Will versus Britt Rosting, Shotgun Shook versus Av, Goods versus T-Top, Chess versus Tay-Rock, and the surprising main event between K-Shine and T-Rex. There were no true misses on the card. Mike P pulled an upset and spoiled Twerk's coming out party with a performance filled with poise. Ill Will and Briz electrified the crowd in their fashion in one of the most energetic battles in Gnome history. Av and Suge was an entertaining battle with a great contrast in styles. Goods had a great return battle against a pretty solid T-Top on the watchback, and Chess and Tay-Rock was a slugfest in battle of the night. But you also had the main event, which kind of went as we expected, but was still serviceable. This Gnome was also the last Gnome we got in New York, specifically in the infamous Irving Plaza venue. At 21, you have URL's second NYC event. When URL returned to New York after setting up shop in the Midwest, they not only gave us a classic card, but they also gave us a display of greats that would be household names. On this night, we were given debuts from Soul Khan, Shotgun Suge, DNA, Sue Surf, and Hollow the Don. And all of them gave good performances and helped the roster and competition flourish. Calico School born in his battle. Soul Khan began his streak of dominance against Deacon Frosty, and they showed promise against Woon P. Suge cleared Hollywood in an impressive outing, but the major takeaways was the classic between Young Ill and Sue Surf, and Hollow having his legendary performance against Big T. Everything about this event was perfect. The setting, the cameos, the first introductions, the gritty feel of the battles, and a display of pure essence of battle rap as a whole. At 20, we have URL's first event. The revival of Smack was a landmark moment in the culture, and October 31st is always remembered as the creation of the Ultimate Rap League. Deacon Frost vs. Big T, Midwest Miles vs. Rich Dallas, X Factor vs. Cortez, and T-Rex vs. Math Hoffa was the main event. While the event was only 4 battles, it was a vital piece of battle rap history, and the main event was instrumental in establishing the brand. The impact and movement the event created sparked one of the greatest leagues the culture has to offer. At 19, we have No Holds Barred. 2014 was the peak of Queen of the Ring as they were hitting their stride, and 2013 and 2014 was them firing on all cylinders. If Caskets or Classics was considered the ace, No Holds Barred was them throwing their big joker. Every battle was billed as a main event caliber battle, and rightfully so. C3 versus a returning Tory Doe, Binding Godiva versus Misfit, Official versus Couture, E-Heart versus Gaddis, 40 Bars for Shasta the Rapper, and QB versus Farrah Funeral. In the legendary Irving Plaza venue, they wasted no time in making history. While the night didn't have many back and forth battles, the night was littered with classic performances. Tory Doe, QB, Jazz the Rapper, and Couture were the best performance of the night, and they had the crowd in the palm of their hands. Tory Doe had her best performance ever against a rising C3 and shut the building down with her legendary first. Couture, with her wit, entertainment, and high-risk, high-reward approach, enabled her to have a crazy moment against the rising official. QB gained another high-profile win against Farrah in her vintage performance, but the most talked-about result was Jazz's display of dominance against 40. This is, and still sits as one of the biggest upsets in battle rap history, one of the biggest crowds in Queen of the Ring history, and one of the most important Queen of the Ring events ever. At 18, we have the Hitman Holla vs. Arsenal event. In 2010, URL started to gain real traction as a league and found themselves throwing larger and larger events. This card would be one of their crown jewels at the turn of the decade, as they booked one of the biggest grudge matches at the time with a pretty good undercard. Tay-Rock vs. Young Cannon, Sko vs. Lada Zay, E-Heart vs. Miss Hustle, Heartless vs. Big Cannon, Soul Khan vs. J Fox, K-Shine vs. Shotgun Shook, O-Red vs. Wave Seva, and a few others. The main event became one of the first million-view battles on the URL brand, and Hitman became a star and gave an all-time performance in the biggest test in his career. We were also gifted the first ever lady battle in URL with E-Heart and Miss Hustle, along with great performances like K-Shine against Suge, Swave against Red, and the well-revered performance from Soul Khan against J Fox, a consequential piece of history for the brand and battle rap advancement. Overall, this event played a major role in pushing URL to newer heights, where 2011-2012 would be monster years for him. At 17, we have Resolution. The return of Cassidy into promotion was a spectacle in itself, but the event was even more rewarding. Chef Trez vs. Shotgun Suge, Young Ill vs. Britt Rothstein, Rum Nitty vs. T-Top, New Jersey Twerk vs. John Nadon, Tay-Rock vs. K-Shine in the long-awaited rematch, and Cassidy vs. Goods is the main event. The only dull moment on the card was Rock and Shine, and that was only because the rematch was overdue and the energy wasn't quite where it needed to be for that type of match. But everything else was action-packed. Trez and Shotgun Suge was a great opener and had one of Trez's best performances on a big stage. Briz had a good performance against a solid Young Ill return. Rum Nitty vs. T-Top was an instant classic. Twerk had a performance of the night against John Nadon, and Cassidy vs. Goods was pure entertainment for various reasons. At 16, we have Rare Breeds. Rare Breeds was one of the biggest cards they threw in their existence. Everything about the card was special. The promotion, the rollout, and the energy behind the event really pushed this to be a legendary night for RBE. The return of Murder Mook versus Averb was epic, and the undercard was supported with great battles like Paste versus Danny Myers, and good battles like Iron Solomon versus Big K, and B-Dot versus Swave Seva. And when you add the crowd's energy behind it, it made for an A1 environment for battles. What also made this night special was it being a direct competitor with Summer Madness 7, and RBE coming out victorious. The event not only changed the perception of RBE as a league, but also changed the dynamic of league warfare. At 15, we have Smack Volume 3. 3 is a magic number, and Volume 3 was one of a kind. This was the second consecutive year that a volume was the best event of the year. Chef Trez versus Loso, Briss Rostin versus Mr. Wavy, Av versus JC, DNA versus Mickey Fax, New Jersey Twerk versus Rum Nitty, Gichigati versus K-Shine, and O-Red versus Iron Solomon. And the more we move up the list, the more you hear the phrase, no bad battles, and it applies here. Chef Trez was locked and loaded against a good Loso, Briss Rostin caught one of the craziest bodies against Mr. Wavy, but the event really picked up with the next 4. Av versus JC was one of the best bar-for-bar battles in the volume series, and was a great segue into their excellent 2019 campaigns. DNA versus Mickey Fax featured DNA's best work and was a great close to a 7-year grudge. Twerk and Nitty was peak greatness of the event, and even though it was short-lived due to tension and ill-advised actions, half of the battle is heavily revered because people knew where the battle was headed, and they knew we were seeing something like no other. But luckily, we still had a great main event between Gichigati and K-Shine that was billed and delivered as the heavyweight match we thought it would be. And while O-Red vs. Iron Solomon had a weird ending, the battle was a solid closer, but it's just unfortunate that it serves as Iron's last battle. At 14, we have Midwest Massacre. As Euro would have it, they would take their brand to the Midwest to showcase their talent and usher in the pivotal Midwest movement that sparked a new competitive edge. Besides Conceited demolishing Jesse James, the battles were Midwest on Midwest crime. You had Averb versus Midwest Miles, Big T versus Hitman Holla, and Calico versus Young Ill. The last two grew to be classic battles with classic lines. Regardless of the disturbances and incidents that derailed the event for a moment, the event served its purpose and expanded the roster in an important fashion. The wave that these guys created with their different styles cannot be understated, and their influence were felt throughout the entire next decade. At 13, we have Summer Impact. This would be the quickest entry of them all. Simply put, there aren't many cards that will have this much star power. You had NWX vs EFB, Bardashians vs E40, multiple remixes versus Good Clips, Marvin Quest vs the Monstars, and Loaded Hollows vs Guns and Cake. This is one of the few times that a crossover event worked to perfection. At 12, we have High Stakes. UW went all the way in crafting a card that put them in the conversation of a major league. And this was a crazy effort as they booked a concise card with the battles that fans were dying to see. Daylight vs. B Magic, O-Red vs. Hitman Holla, Susur vs. Calico, and Loaded Lux vs. Hollow the Don. Not only were we blessed with one of the best battles of all time, but we were also given a great performance from Hitman against O-Red, a Twilight Zone battle between B Magic and Daylight, and an incredibly intense battle between Surf and Calico. This was the peak of UW as an entity and one of the best cards in a year filled with great cards. At 11, we have Summer Madness 6. This was not only one of the best SMs on paper, but it also happened to be a great SM after the fact. Continuing their trend, they gave a surprise battle that featured a long-awaited appearance from Cortez and the Rising Star in New Jersey Twerk. This battle had peaks and valleys, but it was ultimately a pretty good opener. JC and Rum Nitty was when the show really picked up, and it was guns blazing. Nitty was extremely bar-heavy and primed to win, but JC had a career-defining performance that completely shut down the building. Av and T-Top settled their score, and we got an instance where Av was good, but T-Top had a career high that just couldn't be matched. And then we got the built-up match between K-Shine and Hitman Holla. The battle of performance had a definitive winner, as Hitman returned the clock with a vintage performance in a battle where he was doubted. Calico and Briz missed the mark, but luckily for us, Hollow and Tay-Rock made up for it by giving us an instant classic in the last Irving Plaza event we would have in some time. At 10, we have Noane. Night of Main Events was a genius concept, and the execution of the first installment was sensational. Many great moments and many all-time greats putting on a good show. O-Red vs. Tay-Rock, Shotgun Shook vs. Midwest Miles, K-Shine vs. Calico, Susur vs. X Factor, Young Ill vs. DNA, and Hollow the Don vs. Goods is the main event. The return of Surf against X Factor was top-notch. Young Ill was lights out against DNA. Calico put the world and Dot Mob on notice against K-Shine. O-Red and Tay-Rock had a bar fest that still holds up to this day. Shook added another dominant win to his resume, and Hollow and Goods was a quality headline to establish the event as a staple. There wouldn't be a Gnome 14 without them nailing this to perfection. At number 9, we have Max Out 3. I genuinely believe that there's beauty in striking while the iron is hot, and RBE took heed to that by throwing a Max Out that crossed over with the Blue Room. Not only did we get the STO Big 4 back on the same card together, but we also got a stacked card to accompany them. 10 battles in one day was very ambitious, but what's greatness without ambition? And what's having goals without trying to accomplish them? Not only did the 10 battles occur in a timely fashion, but they also threw a surprise battle as a cherry on top. Out of the 11 battles, there was only one that was bad. For the most part, each battle from the lower scale ones to the top of the card delivered. Alongside this, the energy and momentum rose with each battle. By the time they announced B Magic and Arsenal as a surprise battle, the night already had a crazy trajectory. But then you get a crazy battle between Calico and Goods, a crazy battle between Ward and Verb, and cap it off with Hitman and Will. You're talking about one of the greatest things that we ever seen. It's pretty overwhelming when you really think about it, and it's one of the best events I had the privilege of being in attendance for. At number 8, we have Massacre 2. This year, there was a huge buzz around the multiple day Massacre card on King of the Dot, but that buzz stems from the lineage and history of the series, more specifically the greatness of this installment. Mass 2 was impeccable. The matchups, the environment, the timing, and the presentation made this event what it was. A bunch of bangers: Danny Myers vs. Noane, Big K vs. Head Eyes, Iron Solomon vs. B Magic, and Pat Stay vs. Hollow Don as the main event. 4 books in space will at least get you on board, but in King of the Dot's case, they will give you one of the greatest cards in history. At number 7, we have Blackout 5, a year prior to King of the Dot giving us a masterpiece that gave us their magnum opus. This event was the peak of King of the Dot's reign of excellence. 16 total battles with standouts like Daylight vs. Madchild, Big T vs. Rome, Conceited vs. Dumbfounded, Ilmac vs. DNA, Head Ice vs. Sirius Jones, Shotty Horror vs. Hitman Holla, and Past Day vs. Jerome. This was perfect timing as they had 3 good consecutive years and capped it off with the greatest Blackout that contains one of the greatest title defenses and the most press they ever received from an event. A lot of replay value and a beautiful time to remember. At number 6, we have Till Death Do Us Part. This is the quintessential spectacle that many fans hope to see every year. Till Death was a night to remember. After having a year where big stages were pretty much non-existent, we were given an SM and this mega event that had a whole wide range of celebrity involvement and well-created matches. Real Sick vs. Pat Stay, Gaddis vs. Chance the Rapper, Tay-Rock vs. New Jersey Twerk, T-Rex vs. Rum Nitty, Sue vs. Calico, and Geechee Gotti vs. Loaded Lux as the main event. Real Sick and Pat Stay is bittersweet as it was a pretty good battle, but was unexpectedly the last major battle we would get from Pat Stay before he passed. Jazz the Rapper had a monstrous return against the dangerous Gaddis. Not only did she have performance of the night, but she also had one of the best performances of that year. Tay-Rock and Twerk had battle of the night, one of the best battles of the year after a few years of anticipation. Twerk reached his final boss and gave 110%, and Rock showed why he is who he is. Easily one of the best battles in our current decade. While both of the rematches weren't necessarily what we asked for, it was refreshing to see a rematch that involved 2 people with an involved style from their last encounter, at least in the case of Surf and Cal. Rex and Nitty didn't have much depth, but the main event was a rare sighting as we got Geechee Gotti clearing Lux in a loud fashion and stamping himself as one of the greatest battlers in front of his people. At number 5, we have Smack Volume 1. The previous entry may have the glitz and the glamour, but off of pure work, very few can match the quality of the first ever volume. Many fans were skeptical of what this product would look like. Little did they know that they would stumble across one of the greatest events ever. Volume was extremely stacked with crazy matchups and battles we didn't know we needed. Chess vs. Chef Trez, Av vs. B Magic, New Jersey Twerk vs. JC, Mike P vs. Shotgun Shook, Danny Myers vs. K Shine, Rum Nitty vs. Iron Solomon, and Briz Rothstein vs. O-Red. The first 2 battles I mentioned were the letdowns on the card due to the one-sided nature of the battles, but that literally keeps the event from being even higher. Everything else was exceptional. Twerk vs. JC was the first ever volume battle, and it set the precedence with its lyricism and energy. Mike P and Shotgun Shook carried the momentum over into a good battle as well. Then we got the most intense battle on the card between Danny Myers and Shot. This all led into the ultra classic battle between Iron Solomon and Rum Nitty. You had a very good closeout battle between Red and Briz, and you have one of the best events you can ask for. At 4, we have Summer Madness 4, short but straight to the point. SM4 quality-wise may be the best SM we were ever given. Even though we didn't get Arsenal vs. Ill Will, we still got other bangers. Avert vs. John Adam, DNA vs. Tay-Rock, Conceited vs. B Magic, Hitman Holla vs. Sue Surf, and Charlie Clips vs. T-Rex. The night started off with the major heavyweight fight between Conceited and B Magic. This still sits as one of Magic's crowning achievements and a top 3 battle in Conceited's catalog. Everything about this battle was epic, from the build-up, the first round exchanges, and it being one of the few moments where we got to see the passing of the torch in real time. They kept the bangers coming and had Hitman and Surf battle in the second slot. Another all-time battle with all-time rounds, moments, and views to match. Two of the most anticipated battles on the card delivered and on an exceptional level. And the rest of the card held up their end of the bargain as well. Verb and John John was a reset of the event as the crowd wasn't as engaged, but both battlers still gave good performances, with Verb firing on all cylinders early on and John John and Don heating up as the battle progressed. Tay-Rock and DNA was an unexpected display of dominance from Tay-Rock's side. One of the clearest wins in Tay-Rock's career against a top-tier opponent on such a major stage, and it was a ribbon on top of his year that he already had as one of the top guys on the platform. And lastly, we got another display of dominance in all-time fashion that reaffirmed Clip's stance as the greatest battler in the game at that moment. At number 3, we have Battle of the Bay 5. This is one of the few times where the quality and the quantity of the event coalesced into something special. With over 20 battles on the main card, there was still a bunch of standouts to choose from. Kid Twist vs. Fresco, The Source vs. Ilmac, PH vs. Dumbfounded, Mark 1 vs. Abe Verb, Hollow the Don vs. Pass, Disaster vs. Organic, Arsenal vs. Conceited. God damn, this is the epitome of stars aligning, and in Grind Time's case, in the biggest way ever. This event has been a catalyst for many people becoming fans, the growth of the scene, and many people wanting to battle on a high level. You got at least 3 classic battles, over a dozen certified Hall of Famers on the same card as well too. Easily one of the best events to happen in the golden age of battle rap, and many battlers would tell you themselves how pivotal this event was for the battle rap scene. Before we get to our top 2, here are a few honorable mentions that barely missed the cut.
You fragile, I'll break your shit wearing oven mitts. Look, I keep a level head in drama. You seem shook. I'm bipolar, nice jab, mean hook. I'm That's what happened when you got the DJ help. So you don't write like the coolest, you prick. You write like Anubis, like type the coolest. Look how much I spent on kicks. Fight, yoggin.
True. The deuce let a few loose, I'm a true goon. Daz was talking hot, thinking you cute? Bitch, who you? Official don't live in Brooklyn, bitch. You do. I played in the bubble. Profit off another hustle. 20 grams of coke, 10 grams of cut. To us was a double. If I feel, what are they doing? What are y'all doing?
So you can remember the nigga from the East Coast that stripped you of your pride and your glory. Real killers don't need a face mask. I don't plan for you to live to tell your side of the story.
Whole team strapped. My surround sound off. She gon' push my buttons till I point. Then the release gon' have my arm jerking. Like I'm trying to change the channel when the remote not working. Finger on my chin, like, It's dinner time again. No hot water, I'm a pan-fried noodle this nigga. Scrape the pot when I'm through with this nigga. Smack. Who is this nigga?
Well, I ain't gonna rap about how he stole that or stole this, cause Ross thinks, hey man, this nigga even stole Breeze.
Portland's way shit like they get stacked like back that shit whack. Why the fuck would I pack the Mac in the back of the hat? In Detroit, we ride with it on that lap. Gut shot, then he take another. Mama in the hospital crying like, what's happening? What is you saying, brother? I'm saying everything that popped out, that bitch did something. This the Wayne's mother. It's Fred Sanford, who frontin'? You don't like it, then do something. Fuck rap, I run through dust, I'm doom bugging. Plugged, I know some Rasta mines. Tools dumping, I had them dread slide on ice. Cool runners. Stop fucking playing with me, yo! Clubs is gon' blaze, you'll turn up dead. I burn a leg. You my brother, I can't watch you die. So I turn my head. Nigga. The deacon be singing, let us pray. Bow your heads and we amen. Slow it down. I just did it. I said, pass the ratchet. The deacon be singing, let us pray. We'll bow your heads when we amen.
At number 2, we have Summer Madness 2. Summer Madness 2 may be considered the pinnacle and peak of battle rap to many fans, media, battlers, and outsiders as well, which is a blessing and a curse, but that's a discussion for a different video. The Return of the Legends was just as epic as it sounded at the time, and it was one of the best sequels you'll see on the brand. The celebrity involvement, the theatrics, the crowd, and the overall ambiance made for a special night, and no one would have thought that battle rap could get to this height at the time. Everyone knows the card, so I don't really have to break down each battle. But what I can say is that each battle had a memorable moment. You can debate quality, you can use the term nostalgia, you can even say that battle rap is about raps and not about the theatrics, and I would partially agree. But I can also say that very few, if any, events have transcended battle rap in the fashion that SM2 did, and there's a reason why SM2 will always serve as the measuring stick. At number 1, we have Noane. One thing that separates this event from the 2 runner-ups is quality. And yes, I know I spent a good deal of time saying that quality battles aren't the only thing that validates an event as all-timer. But in the case of Noane, you get quality battles, you get highlight reel moments, you get the theatrics with a heavy dose of impact to match. Noane has 2 of the top rounds of all time, 3 of the best battles of the 2010s, one of the biggest bodies of all time, and 90% of the roster on this card are in the top 50 when you talk about the greatest battlers ever. And did I mention how great these battles are? There's not one event that keeps you glued to your seat like this one. The night was on a constant incline from battle to battle, and it is literally the gold standard for an all-time event.
Y'all can hear me, right? You not amused? This the face of a nigga getting his soul lifted. Matter of fact, you want your chain back, Jack? Nigga, go get it!
I got the big 40, the Texas joint. Shit kick, hit PAT, and get extra points.
Just from my exes, PA to the T stay. Give him that Hakeem face, post him up, shoulder bump, then hit his ass with the dream shake.
Chain smoker, back-to-back cigs. This the game closer. This shit gonna put rum down like remain sober. Right. But this shit gonna throw rum up like a hangover, eh?
You see what I'm about? Piece on his scalp, knock a nigga down, watch him bleed out his mouth. Ain't no Izzy dead kick. Just keep squeezing him out and bringing him out. Hit him with like 22 tools if it's a reasonable doubt.
I'm just glad you still here. What you lost? About 10 pounds? I bet you was mad as fuck you couldn't jersey out of them rounds.
Double date, hash browns, I muzzle ate, sliding through Compton. Swear to God, I couldn't fucking wait. All lookers looking confused. The puzzle face, bitch, jump in. I spilled coffee on his shirt like he running late. Hey, run! You know how I know? Last year you could have got 8. They told me wait. I said cool, this no one's fine. Fuck this verb. I could have battled anybody in headline, but you know when you know it's time. All these gun bar niggas on the card, but you could bet Smack still call Lux to fully load this 9, and I'm
You saying this so? You ain't shit but the Super Saiyan of Marks. I don't see great, not a spark, just a fillet with a fork. This ain't your house, you gotta pay her to part. Lux, I'ma take you apart. Take any girl that you want and play with her heart. String her along like I'm playing the heart. You ain't